I feel like the mystery guest here. I mean, you know all these faces, Richard and Luca, and I even said to Alex Rollins, oh, I know you, and he's like, really? Yeah. Was I drunk last night? No, I don't know if he thought that. Anyway, so I'll first tell you who I am, although probably you might have read it on the internet. My name is Carole Westerkamp. It's an interesting combination. Carole is an English name. My mom was from Canada, so I was raised bilingually, English and Dutch. Westerkamp is the Dutch part. Although my dad was born in Indonesia, which has been a colony of Holland for about 300 years. And he was like a mixture. I mean, I can't say he was really Indonesian. He is what in Dutch we call orang Indo. So I'm a nasi campur, mixed. I didn't even know I was a polyglot until I started reading these things on internet, and I thought, oh, polyglot, oh yeah, maybe I'm one too. And I always just thought I had a knack for languages. Okay. But then when I met Richard through Skype, I thought, oh my God, I'm a very lazy polyglot. Because I kind of just learned the languages, you know, traveling, being in the country. Because I studied physical education, actually. Well, that's a long time ago. And then I thought, being in front of classes and not doing what I wanted, I thought, oh, forget it, I'm going to do something else. So I became a tour leader and a tour guide, and I traveled, and I picked up these languages, which, as I now know, makes me a polyglot. But I mean, I didn't really know that. I just thought, oh yeah, it's nice to communicate. So when I heard about the conference, I thought, yeah, that's nice, that's really good, because now I'm an English teacher. I teach English and German at a secondary school, which is not always as easy as addressing you guys, because at least you're more or less silent when I speak. So now you know what to do, be quiet. Anyway, I came across persons who used language not just to communicate, but to get things done by other people. And I thought, well, that's cool. So I don't just use a language to give a message. No, I use language to influence people. So I started studying NLP. That's what my presentation is about, NLP. I'll tell you in a moment what it means exactly, for those of you who don't yet know. And because I like languages, I specifically focused on the L, which means linguistic. And I started thinking, well, that's very interesting, because words give people a certain feeling. One of my first experiences was, I had met this guy from Cuba, and we were getting involved. And then at a certain point, I said to him, ah, no seas imbécil. My mother used to say that to me in the sense of, oh, don't be stupid, don't be silly. You know, it was like small. But when I said to this Cuban guy, ah, no seas imbécil. What? ¿Qué? ¿Ma qué cosa? Yo no soy imbécil. Whoa, the Third World War started. So then I thought, hey, that's funny. Words do something to people. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I mean, I'm sure all of you sitting here have come across that kind of experience. That you use a word in another language, which in your language has kind of a minor meaning, or it's, you know, it's not bad, it's not good, it's kind of neutral. And then the person you're talking to reacts in a way that you think, whoa, what did I say wrong? True? You've had those experiences? Good, yeah. Well, I can see that all of you, as you're seated here now, listening to me, looking at me, feeling whatever you're feeling and thinking whatever you're thinking, that you're doing actually the same as you used to do when you were in school. Maybe you don't even realize, but sitting here means you are already learning. You're already learning things that will be useful to you tomorrow, next week, next month. We never know when. And we also don't really know that we are learning, and that's the good part of it. That's the best part for linguists, actually, and the best part of teaching, that you can teach people things without your students knowing that they're learning. So being here is the same as learning. It's soaking up information, and that's what we're going to do today. So first of all, I'm going to show you part of a movie, and I have my dear assistant Richard here, because not all the things work with the remote control. So we're going to start the movie, and it's all about the meaning of words. So I'll step aside and tell Richard when to stop the movie to heighten the tension. For those of you who can't see it, it says, "I'm blind, please help." Will you stop it now, Richard? Okay, so you saw that the lady changed something on the sign. It first said, "I'm blind, please help." Now, does any of you have an idea what she might have written on the sign?
Yeah.
You have? Okay, keep that idea. Probably you know the movie, right? Well, no, but if you don't know, start pondering the thought. What might she have written down that suddenly made all these people come by and donate a lot more money? I'll come back to that later. I'll see if this works. Yeah. NLP. So say what? It's a very quick presentation. First, neuro. Susanna spoke about the neurologist, Oliver Sacks. I love the book about the guy who thought his wife was a hat. Very interesting. The neurology is very complicated, but in this sense, in neuro-linguistic programming, it means the 5 senses. So it means the seeing, the hearing, the feeling, so touch, the tasting, and which one have I left out?
Smell.
Very good, the smelling. See, that's what we do as teachers as well. We're like, you know? So the smell. So how does the world come to us? It comes to us through our senses. Well, you might say that's obvious. Yeah, it does. But then there's the linguistic part. And for the linguistic, I just have a nice picture of a few English words. I'll come to that later on, of course. And then it says programming. Why programming? Well, this is apparently the inside of a computer. We don't know this, but we program ourselves. Other people program us as well. And how is that done? Well, by language. It's also done by experience, of course, but we put our experiences into language. So that's basically what it's all about. And to do the explaining about the neuro-linguistic programming, I have to go into the theory a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. In NLP, we make use of a model, but then don't all scientists. All scientists use a simplified model of the world to bring across the theory. So does NLP. And it's not really, it doesn't really matter if it's true or not, because there is no model that is true. I mean, the map is not the territory, right? If I show you a map of Budapest, it's not what you feel when you live here, or when you've visited it several times and you like it, or when it's your first time and you have a certain experience. Looking at the map doesn't mean that that is Budapest. So this model doesn't mean it's true, but it is helpful in explaining. And it might look not that easy yet, but it will become very easy after I've done the explaining. First of all, we go to the left side of the right side, sorry, of the map, which says external event. Well, that can be anything. It can be me speaking to you now. You hear that. It can also be that you're in the chair thinking, this chair is not very comfortable. Then you feel something that's not okay. That's also an external event. Right. So it comes to us through our senses, and then in our heads, and actually it's our whole body, but it would be too big of a model if it would be a complete body. So in our heads, something happens, and then we make an internal representation. For instance, let me ask you this question. If I would ask you of an island where you would like to go on holiday, can some of you raise their hands and mention, tell me, Susanna, I know your name, so that's
Bali.
you. Bali.
Lombok.
Lombok. Yeah.
Texel.
Texel, ha, Dutch island, of course.
Iceland.
Iceland.
Hainan.
Sorry?
Hainan.
Hainan. Okay, I couldn't hear it. I'm getting old, I guess.
Madagascar.
Madagascar. Okay, well, isn't that interesting that this one word, and it happens to be the English word island, but each of you has a different internal representation of the island. Sometimes I think it's really a miracle that we understand each other. Because if I talk about an island, I don't think of any of these islands you mention. I can think of any other islands. I mean, I can even say Australia. So that's interesting, right? There's an external event, in this case the word island. It gives everybody a different internal representation. Luckily, sometimes we have the same representations, but not always. Okay, what does the internal representation do? It brings you in a certain mood, in a state. Because I think if Susanna thinks of Bali and Jan thinks of Texel, it's like, well, a certain good feeling. Or maybe if you had a bad experience there, it's like, oh, awful. So the feeling does something to our physiology as well. If you'll allow me, I'd like you to participate in a small experiment. Is that okay with you? Okay, so I would like you all to kind of hang in your chairs and not listen to me as attentively as you were before. You just kind of hang in your chairs and you let the corners of your mouth like droop, and you just sit there and, well, let everything loose. And then I'd like you to feel extremely happy or motivated. Does that work? Well, I can see from your faces like no, right? That's not that easy. Okay, so now I want you to sit up straight in your chair. You make your hands into fists. Yeah, and you kind of hold your chin up and the corners of your mouth are like up. And now I want you to feel terribly depressed. Well, I hear laughing, so obviously you're having trouble feeling depressed. Okay, so that's why there's these arrows going both ways. So that this influences each other. Now, so in short, I can repeat it again, there's an external event, something happens. It goes through our filters in our head. Then it gives us a certain, it's a bit difficult to speak with my hands in the microphone as well. It gives us an internal representation, which gives us a certain feeling, and that comes out as behavior. The feeling is actually the behavior. We can't see what goes on in people's minds. That's what made me a polyglot, I think. I wanted to know what's going on in people's minds. I want to hear what they're thinking. I want to, well, feel what they're thinking, but that's impossible because the only thing you can see is their behavior. So, external event, filters, internal representation of the island or something else, feeling, behavior. Now that we've got that, I think I can try to go on to the next slide.
This is an awareness test.
Stop it. It's too quickly. The awareness test, yeah. Because I wanted. You see, that's the thing that sometimes happens. I'll go back, if it's possible, yeah. Because I first should explain the 3 top words that are there before I go further. Because what happens, I told you about the external event. We see and we hear and we feel the world. Have you got any idea how many stimuli we get per second? You do?
Too many.
Too many, obviously. But how much is too many? Well, 1,000? Million?
Several thousands.
Several thousand?
Over 9,000.
Over 9,000. You're right. Almost everyone was right. Now it's a lot. Officially, they say it's 2.6 million stimuli per second. I have never counted them, but I believe them. Which means, what would happen if we would get all these stimuli at the same time? What would happen? Oh, you'd go crazy, I think. And it is true that this is what happens to people who have a condition known as ADHD. They call it attention deficit. But actually it's not a deficit. They have too much attention for everything around them. They hear every squeak, every noise, everything, so they can't really focus on one thing because they're hearing all these things, they're seeing all these things, they're feeling all these things. So what happens? What do we do in order not to go completely bonkers, go completely crazy? We delete some information. We just don't hear it, we don't see it. I think women know that men often delete information. Sorry, feeble joke. Okay, we delete. We distort, and that's actually the easiest one to explain. So the other two I'll tell you a bit more about in a moment. But the distortion is, for instance, it happens to me a lot when it's kind of shady and dark out at night. I walk outside and all of a sudden I think, my God, there's this man or this thief or ghost or anything, and I get a real shock until I come closer and I think, oh, it's just a tree. But it looked different because it was kind of shady, you know. Well, that's distortion. We try to make an image in our mind, again, of something we know, and then sometimes we make these images that are not correct. Okay? And then there's the generalized one, which I'll also show. But first I'm going to show you the awareness test. Now probably it'll work again. Yeah.
How many passes
if you know the
does
movie,
the team in white make?
Don't tell. Count. So count the passes. How many?
The answer is 13.
Very good, 13. But
did you see the moonwalking bear?
Did you see the moonwalking bear? Yeah. Some of you must have known it before. If you haven't seen it before, there he is. Had you seen it? If you hadn't seen the movie before, who saw the moonwalking bear first off? Wow, you're good. But that shows you that not many people see that moonwalking bear. It's actually a commercial. It says it's easy to miss something you're not looking for. Well, that's exactly my point. So you're not aware of it because you don't need to be aware. They told you to count the passes made by the team in white. So who's going to focus on a moonwalking bear? Now the good thing is that once you've seen the bear, you cannot not see it. Now it's impossible to see this movie without seeing the moonwalking bear, and for the ones who like this kind of movie, there's a lot more movies like that on the internet that are very, very nice. In any case, that is deletion. Then I have a picture of a door, because that is the generalize. How would it be if every time that you came at a door you were like, that's interesting, but what is it? Well, it would take you ages to live your life, wouldn't it? We have to generalize, and I mean this is from when the human being, well, from the prehistory, it was very important if you were hunting that you knew that a lion might be dangerous and that a rabbit would probably not kill you if you didn't kill it first. You know, I mean, it's very nice to generalize, but we tend to do that maybe a bit too much. So this is the model on which NLP has been built. And then we're coming to the meaning of words. Because, for instance, how do I know that a door is a door? Yeah, I have that experience. When I was very little, I saw that a door was something that could be opened or closed. And sometimes it was closed when I wanted to be open. So I learned that there are various ways of opening a door. Maybe I'll tell you the anecdote of my ex-husband. He's Cuban. And we lived in Holland for a long time. And we were invited to a friend's home. And then he said, well, me voy al baño, I'm going to the toilet. Yeah, okay, so whatever. But then I thought, my God, he's been gone for like 10 minutes. What happened? So I walked into the corridor, found the toilet and said, you, Lucio, ¿dónde estás? Yeah, no sé cómo descargar el baño. I don't know how to flush the toilet. And I'm like, well, what can be so hard about flushing the toilet? You press the knob. No, there is no knob. Okay, so you pull the cord. No, there is no cord. I'm like, okay, trying to make a visual representation of, you know, the toilets. So I said, okay, maybe there's a knob on the floor, like in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. You press with your foot, in order not to dirty your hands. No, it's not there. So I said, okay, hold on, I'm going to ask. So I went to the host and I said, maybe a silly question, but Lucio cannot flush the toilet. And then he said, oh, sorry, I forgot to ask. In our case, it's the pipe, you know, that runs from the water thing down. You have to pull the pipe, and then the toilet flushes. And then I thought, okay, I remember now that I have once or twice in my life encountered that kind of toilet, but I can imagine that in Cuba, where there is no water to flush the toilet, mostly, that you wouldn't have thought of that. So it's all in what you have experienced before. Language is based on your experience of things. And if you have never experienced, well, I mean, for me it's hard to think of a word that I haven't experienced before, but sometimes people will give you a word and you're like, I don't know what it means, so it means nothing to me. When I give speeches like this, I often ask people, have you seen the peralia in front of the door? Did you see it? The peralia? No? It's nothing. That's my point. I just use a word, I think up a word, and I say, have you seen it? And people say, no, no. But what happens is they start what they call a derivational search inside. They start searching in their memory, in their dictionaries, in their pictures. What is it? Well, then I say, no, it doesn't exist. I just made up the word. Ha ha. No, but I mean, it proves my point, doesn't it? The use of language, and now we're getting to the grid of what I wanted to say, is not just the words, but it does mean a lot. I told you how people make images. Some people don't make visual images. Some people make sound images. They hear the world more than they see them. Other people feel the word more. And the good news is you can attune to that in whatever language you speak. Because, and now I have to use my paper, because I'm a very visual person. So visual persons, and I think Susanna is visual too, because she speaks at a very high pace and her hands are moving all the time, and those are very visual people. I usually talk too quick for my students to follow, and then I say, hey, you don't understand what I'm saying? Ah, come on. And then I realize, oh, I've been speaking at too quick a pace. But I do move my hands a lot. Okay, visual. Auditory people tend to talk more slowly. They use their hands, but their hands are usually a bit lower. The ears are not that much lower than the hands, but the auditory people speak with their hands a bit lower. And then the, for me, least easy type to represent is the kinesthetic person. Kinesthetic persons tend to have a very deliberate speech, and I think if I do it, it sounds a bit as if I'm acting, because I am, but you may all know persons who are more kinesthetic. You don't? Well, that's because you're polyglots. Usually, I get kind of impatient with people who are very kinesthetic, because half an hour before they finish talking, I know what they're going to say. Or I think I do. But you can also hear it in their words, and that's what makes it interesting. Now, not to have learned this all off by heart, if I were to say, it appears to me today, or it's clear to me, or I take a dim view of that, or in my mind's eye, or you must see to it now, what words do you hear me use? Visual words, yeah. So people who are visual tend to express themselves in a very visual way. Now, the auditory people would say, I don't like the sound of that. Or, are you tongue-tied sometimes? State your case. Are you deaf? We're not on the same wavelength. You hear what I'm saying? Well, that's an auditory expression. Also, for instance, empty vessels make the most noise. Well, all these expressions that have to do with sounds, yeah, are mostly used by people who are auditory, meaning to say who represent the world to themselves more in sounds. Because if you think of the island I just asked you, some people might think of the sound of the sea or the sound of the silence. Or other people might feel the sand in between their toes, because those people might say, I feel like, or haven't you yet grasped the idea of what I'm saying? Grasp, it's very kinesthetic. Or I'm going to lay my cards on the table now. You're a pain in the neck. Hang on there. Hold your tongue. Yeah, that's hold and tongue in a way, but or eat your heart out, or words, you know. So you can hear, when you talk to people, you can hear, other than only see, what type of person you have in front of you, and where do you think that could come in handy? Well, in making yourself understood, in getting ideas across, that's kinesthetic. So that helps. And by a bit of training, you can more or less see and hear and feel what the person is like. And the funny thing is, you can say the same thing 3 times. I do as much of it as I can in class. I repeat myself, and I repeat myself again. I repeat myself, but the students don't even notice. Now you might say, yeah, oh, they're busy texting and doing other things in class. Okay. But it's also true that if you are a visual person, you won't even hear somebody saying the same thing in different words, because you're focused on the visual part. Now, isn't that interesting? Yeah. So that's one part of NLP, and of course I have far too little time. How many minutes do I have?
Well, you're okay for another 10 or so.
Another 10. Oh, wow. That's one part of the language use, or how you can make use of whatever language you speak, because you can do it in Spanish, in Arabic, in Frisian, in well, whatever. And another use is what they call the Milton model. Milton is derived from Milton Erickson, and he was an American hypnotherapist who was very, very successful with people. And NLP was founded by 2 guys, John Grinder and Richard Bandler, one a linguist and another a computer technologist, an IT person. So probably that's where the name came from, neuro-linguistic programming. They said that you can learn anything you like by modeling, and I've heard the word this morning as well. You know, we language learners or language teachers, yeah, we like to model other people. So that is very NLP. So you see, all of you were already doing NLP without even knowing it. Well, how cool is that? So you model people. When you model them, there's a bit more to it than just sit back and listen and look. You have to find the strategies, but that's what we're all talking about here, so that's so cool. You model other people. Well, Erickson started, Bandler and Grinder started modeling Milton Erickson. And they found out that they did what I did when I started my talk, like, okay, so you're all sitting here this morning, and you're listening to me, and looking at me, and it's in a way like when you were in high school, so I'm kind of mind reading, and I'm basing your current experience. It has all kinds of terms, everything is a model. So there's a lot of techniques that you can use when speaking to people other than just speaking their language, well, just other than speaking their language. You can also use those kind of techniques, like mind reading, being very positive, and saying that what you're learning now, it'll come in handy maybe tomorrow, maybe even today, but maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, we don't yet know when, and I'm addressing your subconscious. And it's kind of like hypnotic language. Well, there's hypnotizers in the whole world, so whatever language you speak, you can use NLP to have more effect, to teach people things without them knowing that you're teaching it. And I'll give you another example. If I am, as I am, a language teacher, and I come into class and I say, hey, good morning class, today we're going to learn something that's really difficult. What do you think the effect is on the students? Well, my students anyway, oh, well, if it's difficult, forget it. I'm not even going to try. So NLP is also about what words do you use. In NLP, we would not use difficult. We would use it's not yet easy. Why? Because if I tell you not to think of the pink elephant, the famous example, what pops up in your mind? What internal representation do you have? Yeah, the pink elephant. So, the brain cannot fathom the use of the word not. Really. And what do teachers do? Don't move around so much. Don't talk to each other. Don't do this, don't do that. And I'm like, hey, if I go shopping, I don't have a list with, okay, so let me see, today no shampoo, no potatoes, no cheese, no, my God, what am I going to buy? So, the good thing is, you can use words in any language that you do want, the things you do want. So I tell my students, I want you to sit still. I want you to take your pen and to write down what I'm saying now. So, and of course, I'm human. It's not that I have completely banned the word don't, because I was just going to say it now. And I still do that. Another word I don't use, supposedly, is try. Because if I throw something down on the floor, and I say to Richard, hey Richard, try to pick up that book. Try to, no, don't pick it up. That's not trying. If you pick it up, you've picked it up. Well, okay. I'll abandon my speech if I can see you doing that. Trying is not doing. So I tell my students, if you say, oh yeah, well, I'll try, then you're already calculating the fact, or, you know, counting with the fact that it's not going to work. So just say, I'll do it. And of course, if I meet someone and I'll say, hey, I'll phone you tonight, it doesn't mean it's 100% certain, but it's more certain than if I say, oh yeah, I'll try to call you this evening. People tell me that, I always get very nervous. I'll try to call you this evening. Oh yeah, sure. So, and then there's the word but, and I don't mean but with double T. I mean the word but. If I, for instance, somebody asks me, how do you like my hairdo or whatever, I've just been to the hairdresser, and I say, oh yeah, it's very nice, but last week I liked it as well. Even the word, I liked it as well. If I say but, it's like a delete. You delete whatever came before. Now that can come in handy. If you first say, for instance, okay, I know maybe this grammar structure is not yet very easy for you, but then you have not only used the easy, so the not easy kind of, you know, to make it easier, you have also used the word but in a good way, because that it was not easy is forgotten, but if you study today with me in my class, you'll learn it. So you use two structures, two language structures, if you wish, that enhance the learning. Right? So that's a good use of the word but. And if you use it in the other way, like, yeah, I can see you've studied for the test, but you still had a 1, or that's in Dutch the lowest number. I know in Germany it would be the other way around, but a 1 or D minus. Then the but is indeed used like, forget it. I don't think you studied at all. So it's an interesting use of the words, right? So you can use words in whatever language to do something you like. Now, the last secret I'm going to reveal is that I thought NLP was very much about getting other people to do what I wanted, changing other people. In the end, I guess it was me that changed, because it doesn't really work that way. I mean, salespeople, etc., they learn NLP to sell, for instance, a car or something, because if you're a very kinesthetic person and you like the feel of things, then you don't want the salesperson to say, well, look, it's a beautiful color and it's nice and shiny and the motor hardly makes any noise. I mean, who cares? I want to feel the car. I need a salesperson who tells me, get in the car, feel how the seat feels when you sit in it, you know, and experience how the motor feels when you're driving the car. Then you will sell me the car. So for us who want to learn languages ourselves, it might be interesting to know what your style is of representing the world to yourself. Is it visual? And by the way, a small tip, dyslexic people are very visual. They can make the words in their minds. If you put it up left for you left, I mean, I was putting it to my right hand, so no, I did it the other way around. I sometimes get so confused. It is the right side, for me it's left. If you look up to the left and you post words there, on a piece of paper, a sheet of paper or whatever, then you will get them in your visual memory. Because your auditory memory is, well, where your ears are, and your feeling memory is actually down. So a lot of people who sit reading like this, with their book on their lap, will not have a picture of the word. Because here, there's no entry into the visual system. So that's, yeah, I have too little time actually. But anyway, this was more or less what I wanted to tell you, that maybe you'll have a look into the NLP. You can ask me all kinds of questions afterwards, of course. And now you probably want to know what that woman wrote on the, I'm not going to do that, on the card.
What did you do to my sign?
I wrote the same, but in different words.
I wrote the same, but in different words. It's a beautiful day and I can't see it. Change your words, change your world. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm really impressed. Thank you very much. I mean, it gave a lot of things for us to think about in terms of the way we communicate, and a lot of really good messages there, a lot to look into. What I'd like to do is open the floor for a few people to ask some questions before we get to our next speaker. We've got about 5 or so minutes, so we can have a couple of questions, and then, I mean, as Carole graciously offered, you can always talk to her during the breaks or during the lunchtime, so, you know, hunt her down. Oh, dearie me, as I break my neck on the steps. So, first questions, Valence.
Hi, I'd like to ask, what did you mean by the brain cannot interpret no?
Oh, up on stage again?
Yeah, come on.
Well, I'm not a scientist, but what I've been told is that the brain, the same way you say, okay, don't put your bicycle here, you have an image of the bicycle there. I mean, don't think of the pink elephant. You can't not think. No, that was a triple. You can't not think. It's a bit like Afrikaans, hè? Vind niet leuk niet. Yeah, so that's actually how it works. It just doesn't work that way. The brain needs to make an image of what it's not supposed to do. So then you have it in front of you, and I don't know, are there people here who ride a motorcycle? No. Okay. Let me see. Well, a bicycle then, it's pretty much the same. I mean, the Dutch, of course, obviously, but, well, it's okay. If you ride a bicycle and you think of where you don't want to go, and actually it's the same way in a car, if you do a slip course or something, and you're going everywhere, if you think, oh my God, that's not where I want to go, that's where you will go. No, that's really true, and I don't know how it works in the brain, but it works that way.
So if you want to go there, you will go there. If you don't want to go there, you will go there.
Yeah, but you don't want to go there, but you're thinking of where you don't want to go. So that's what I mean by using your words wisely. Use your words where you want to go. I mean, it's the same with a cab driver. If I get into a cab and I don't tell the person where I want to go, what's he going to do? Well, okay, I'll help you. Some cab drivers might just sit there and think, taking time, I'm going to put the meter on and she'll pay anyway. Some cab drivers might think, oh well, while you're thinking of it, I'll just drive any old place. So you have to tell the driver where you want to go. Now your brain is like, it's a bit strange to say that, but in a way a bit like a taxi driver. You have to give him or her orders. If I look in my purse, it's over there, and if I say, oh, I have to look for my keys, my brain says, yes ma'am, we'll look for them. And then I spend like 10 minutes looking for my keys. And this is really true, so go out and try it. You don't need to believe me, NLP is very experimental. Just do it and see if it works for you. Now if I tell myself, I'm going to get my keys, my brain also says, yes ma'am. Within 2 seconds I have my keys. So that's what I mean by focus on what you do want. Does that explain, does that answer your question? Okay.
I'm going to swap microphones. Okay, any other questions at all? Well, I'm going to go here because it's easier for me, sorry. I'll come back in a minute.
So you talked about people deleting information. So since you've used NLP, have you found that people forget less of what you've said?
Yes.
So how do you do it for each person? Because I mean, you have whatever 40 students, and then the other people in your life. Do you have to make a mental image of, oh, this person's kinesthetic, that person's visual? I mean, that's a lot of information.
In my classroom, I don't do that. I mean, in the end, I end up knowing, of course, because I treat them also outside class, etc. But like your group, if this was my first day at school, I don't know. Some of you maybe, but so then I just repeat my message 3 times in 3 different ways. I bring it across like now, very auditory. I'm speaking all the time, but for the people who are very visual, this is probably not enough. So then I have the PowerPoint. And the kinesthetic people, yeah, they'd have to do things. Normally speaking, if you do NLP, you also do all kinds of exercises. Well, I did one with you, like feeling, you know, and then feel happy. That's the feeling, and those people learn by feeling. So some of my students learn best while walking around the room, and I don't really appreciate that an awful lot, but I know they need it. So then I sometimes, for instance, in German, I made this song, that's your thing, Ich und du und sie es, wir und ihr und sie, and then my kids said Fles, which is a bottle, because it rhymed. So then we started doing on a Dutch song, Ich und du und sie es, wir und ihr und sie Fles. And then I started saying, okay, first we do it with one hand, because Ich is one person, singular, du, sie es, I pointed to somebody else, and then wir und ihr, with 2 hands, ihr is you, und sie, well, them over there, they, and then with the 2 hands. So in that way I help the kinesthetic learners, because they're doing something with their hands, and they're also singing, which is, well, not really only kinesthetic, but does that answer your question?
But what about in your day-to-day life when you're communicating with people who are new to you? Do you repeat everything 3 times?
No. That's why I quickly went past the word, but it said sensory acuity. You become, when you do this more often, you will become more sensory aware of what people do. So for instance, my director at school, he's a very kinesthetic person. And I noticed that because when he sits down, he kind of always sits a bit like this. And I'm always in front, you know, yeah, woo! I'm very visual, but he's very kinesthetic. So just by seeing him doing that, I thought, okay, relax. I try to tune into what he says, and then I think, he's kinesthetic. I listen to the words he uses, and then in like 2 or 3 minutes, I can get quite a good image, quite a good feel of what the person is like.
I don't want to give the impression of people that here there are no questions, only answers, but I just want to help you about this don't thing. I feel it's kind of valid. We disagree here a little bit, but I think it's valid. And I found out 2 psychological reasons why don't use the word don't. One is simply biological. I think we are genetically coded to compete. I mean, males usually, but females also maybe. So if somebody says don't do something, just like bad kids, we will just try to do that. So maybe psychologically, if somebody says don't do this, we will always revolve our minds around it, why we should do that. And the second explanation may be why the don't is not very good idea to use, because I heard about inventors who invented things without knowing that it was impossible. Now, if you implant in someone's mind that it's impossible, then they will say, oh, forget about it, I'm not even going to try. But if they don't know it's impossible, maybe they will invent it, and people will say, how did you do that? Well, I didn't know it was impossible. So maybe that's why it's a very valid point. If you want people not to do something, just try to, drag their attention to somewhere else positively, not reiterate what they shouldn't do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we had another...
I have a real question.
Okay. Real question. I guess I'll pretend one.
Oh, now a real question. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So, do you constantly watch yourself like a watchdog, trying to understand what you're perceiving and adjusting your behavior? Because you said before that we're constantly being programmed by stimuli and by the environment, and I suppose that you probably have to compensate for that if you want to go in a different direction. So,
well, it's a very good question. It's actually part of the learning process that first of all, you're not even aware that you don't know something. Then you become aware that you miss something and you start learning, and that's the phase you're talking about. Then you're very much aware of what am I doing. It's the same with driving a car. First, when you drive a car, it's like all these separate things. My God, I have to hold the steering wheel and I have to shift gears and I have to use my feet. But then, after a while, you become so good at driving a car, I hope, and otherwise I hope I'm not around when you drive, but you become so good at driving the car that all these different stimuli, all these different things become like a total package. You're not even aware. So then you start, I don't know, lighting a cigarette while you're driving, or touching the radio, or phoning, which is not allowed, blah, blah, blah. But you do all these things while you're driving. And that's the same with the NLP. At first, I was constantly aware of everything I was saying. And, well, it doesn't go that far that I could say that I was ever in my life tongue-tied, but I was more aware of what I was doing and saying, and it did slow me down a bit, and then it kind of becomes a second nature. Does that answer your question?
You mentioned that some people are visual, some people are auditory, kinesthetic, and I'm wondering if people with ADHD are those who are just aware and process the information using all of these different styles.
Well, they haven't really researched that, but I think it is true, because a lot of the students I have, I also taught in primary schools some time ago, and then there it was even more noticeable because they're still, young and not so much influenced by the system, if you wish, so they kind of run around and we even had special cushions for them to sit on so that they could wobble all the time, because otherwise they would be wobbling in the normal chairs and that would be very strange to them, it wouldn't help. So then we had these special cushions, rubber things with air, and they could kind of wobble. So I think that your question touches a very good point, that yes, they get too much sensory information from all the senses. Even, they taste something in their mouth, or they feel their stomach is turning, like, oh, I'm hungry.
And what would you suggest for ways for people to suppress this sort of urge to process lots of... I ask because I'm convinced I have ADHD myself.
I knew it, no. I would just say, hey, be happy with who you are, because most of the... because truly, most of the ADHD people I know are very brilliant, and they have they have so much creativity. Well, I can more or less see from a distance, and they just they learn to prioritize. It's a question of focus. That is true. It's a question of focus. Like, okay, I feel something, but I'm not paying attention to it. Now I'm doing this, or I'm doing the other thing. But hey, one of our most famous stand-up comedians in Holland, Jochem Meijer. I'm looking at Jan because I know he's from Holland. He has ADHD and he's totally brilliant. But you leave his conference and you're totally whacked out, because he's about 50 times as bad as I am. So.